usually tell this story, not because I've forgotten it, but because some part of me feels like speaking it aloud makes it come alive again. But lately, the nights have been restless and the memories won't leave me alone. Maybe telling it will ease the weight, or maybe it will make it worse. The line between what is real and what the mind creates has always been thin for me, and after that house, it was shattered entirely. It started when I was a photography student. I was obsessed with finding unusual places to capture, the kind of images that carried silence inside them. Abandoned houses, rusting cars, forgotten corners of towns people had stopped remembering. I had an eye for decay, for the beauty in things left behind. And that's how I found it. There was this house on the edge of town, the kind of place no one mentioned unless it was followed by a nervous laugh and a quick change of subject. It had stood empty for decades, leaning under the weight of years, its shutters sagging like tired eyelids. The lawn was a tangled mess of weeds, and the front gate was warped and twisted, held together by a single rusted hinge. Yet despite the neglect, the house seemed to be waiting. It didn't look like it was crumbling. It looked like it was holding its breath. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, just packed my camera bag with my trusty film. Camera, a choice I now question, and a single lens, along with a powerful flashlight. I drove out one cloudy evening, the kind of day that felt both like a promise and a threat. The sun had barely dipped, and the sky held that deep blue that makes shadows sharpen and stretch. When I parked on the dirt road a good 100 yards away, I was struck by the absolute silence. It wasn't just the usual countryside quiet. It was a kind of hush that pressed against my ears, a vacuum where sound should be. Even the crickets, normally a tireless choir, seemed absent, as if they knew better than to make a noise here. I pushed through the gate, its hinges groaning like a long-suffering creature, and felt a prickle run down my arms. The air was cooler here, heavier, as if the house itself exhaled a thick, cold breath. A faint path of cracked flagstones led to the porch, which groaned in protest as I stepped onto it. The front door was ajar, a dark mouth promising entry. Inside, the smell hit first. Damp wood, ancient mold, and something else. Faint, metallic like rust, or something more visceral like dried blood. My footsteps on the floorboards echoed more loudly than they should have, like the house was hollow beneath me, a drum waiting for a beat. Every corner seemed to lean forward, watching, its walls breathing a slow, deliberate stillness. I had an immediate sense of being an unwelcome guest, an intruder in a place that had already settled into its own rhythm. I lifted my camera, the familiar weight a small comfort, and began to shoot. The foyer, with its peeling wallpaper that hung in strips like flayed skin, and a staircase swallowed by a menacing shadow. A living room, where torn curtains hung like shrouds over windows thick with dust. I kept moving, floorboards sighing under each step, the shutter clicking with a sharp, mechanical sound that seemed to shatter the profound quiet. That was when I noticed something odd, something that made my stomach clench. I had a habit of checking the preview on my digital camera, an old model I used for scouting, before switching to my film camera for the real shots. When I checked the first few previews, the photos weren't just capturing what I saw. In one, the curtains didn't look tattered. They looked like they were drawn aside, as if someone had just peeked out before I took the picture. In another, the staircase wasn't empty. A dark smudge, like a tall, thin figure, stood halfway up, barely visible against the gloom. I frowned, wiped the lens, and took another photo. A nervous energy starting to build in my chest. Same thing. The smudge was still there. The longer I stayed, the more wrong the pictures became. It was as if the camera was revealing an unseen layer of reality, one that the naked eye was mercifully blind to. I switched to my film camera, the one I had trusted for years, but the same unsettling distortions appeared. In one of the bedrooms, I lifted the camera and froze. The room itself was empty, just broken furniture and a thick blanket of dust. But in the photo, a man stood by the window, turned slightly away, face blurred as though the camera refused to hold it in focus. His hands hung at his sides, fingers too long, too stiff, like something carved from wood. My first thought was, someone's here. My chest tightened, ears straining. But the room around me was still, the dust unbroken, the only sound the frantic beat of my own heart. Only the photo told another story, a story that was unfolding in the negative space between the seconds. I should have left then. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to forget the project and get back in my car. But I didn't. Curiosity is a sickness, and mine was stronger than fear. It promised a story no one had ever captured, a truth hidden behind the facade of a crumbling house. I kept walking, snapping pictures, moving deeper into the house, a growing dread mixing with the thrill of discovery. The hallway stretched longer than it had any right to, lined with doors that seemed closer together each time I turned. My flashlight beam quivered over cracked wallpaper, revealing shapes that looked almost like faces pressed from the inside out. Each photo I took grew darker, less about the house and more about something inside it. One picture showed the hallway bending in a way it didn't in reality, like the walls were leaning closer, swallowing the passage. Another showed a door at the far end, glowing faintly, though in truth it was shut and lifeless. By the time I reached the last door, my hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the camera. I opened it slowly, the hinges screaming, and found a narrow room. A child's room. The wallpaper was faded, patterned with little blue stars. A broken crib lay in the corner, its bars splintered. On the floor, a doll, its porcelain face cracked, one eye missing. A permanent vacant stare. I swallowed hard and lifted my camera, the lens feeling like a peephole into a secret world. The photo froze my blood. The crib wasn't broken in the picture. It was whole, and inside it, something lay curled, small, pale, with eyes open wide. The doll on the floor had moved. Now it sat upright, staring directly at the lens with its single empty socket. My throat tightened. I lowered the camera and looked around. Empty. Just dust and rot. But when I lifted the camera again, the figure inside the crib was sitting up, watching me. The doll on the floor had turned its head. I could see the cracks in its porcelain face widen as if in a silent grimace. That was when the sound came. A shuffle, soft and deliberate, from behind me. I spun around, flashlight jerking, but the hallway was empty. My heart pounded so hard it drowned the silence, a frantic drum against my ribs. The air grew colder, the kind of cold that steals the warmth from your bones. My breath fogged in the beam of my flashlight. And then faintly I heard it, a click, not from my camera, from somewhere deeper in the house, like a shutter snapping. Then another, a slow rhythmic click, 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 as if something unseen was documenting my panic. I backed toward the door, raising my camera instinctively. The preview showed the hallway again, but this time it wasn't empty. Figures lined the walls, blurred and pale, their heads all turned toward me. They weren't just smudges now. They had form, shape, and undeniable presence. My legs nearly buckled. I lowered the camera, nothing there. Lifted it again, they were closer. I could see the faint outline of hands raised to their own blurred faces, as if they too were taking my picture. My pulse roared in my ears. I stumbled out, nearly tripping, snapping pictures in blind panic. Each photo worse than the last. Figures moving closer, faces stretching, mouths open in silent screams. They were no longer just in the photos. They were in the corners of my vision, in the shadows that danced just beyond the flashlight's reach. When I finally burst into the foyer, the front door loomed ahead like a beacon. I didn't hesitate. I ran, shoving it open so hard it splintered from its frame, and bolted into the night, my lungs burning for air. The sound of the door crashing against the wall was the last noise I heard from the house. The air outside felt like surfacing from deep water. I gasped, choking, my legs weak, the cold of the house still clinging to my skin. Behind me, the house stood silent, waiting. I didn't look back. Not once. I fumbled for my car keys, my hands shaking so hard I could barely get the key in the ignition. I drove home, the camera heavy in my bag, the weight of the film inside it feeling like a captured soul. I should have destroyed it, should have thrown it in a river, buried it, anything to sever the connection. But I didn't, I couldn't. I developed the film later that night. In the dark room I had set up in my apartment, and the images were even worse in print. The figures were clearer, their faces hollow, their eyes empty. I stacked them in a box and hid them in the back of a closet. And sometimes when the nights are long, I hear it. That faint, unmistakable sound. Click, click, as if something is still taking pictures of me, waiting for the moment I look and see what's standing just behind me. I don't use that camera anymore. I don't even touch it. It sits in a locked case in the attic, but I know it's not empty. I know it's still full of film. And sometimes, I wonder if the images on that film are of me, now from the back, waiting for the moment I turn around. And if you're hearing this now, maybe it means the camera never stopped. Maybe it's still clicking, still capturing, not just me, but anyone who listens to this story. So tonight, when the lights are out and the silence grows heavy, Listen closely. If you hear that faint sound, click, click, don't look back, because by then it's already too late. Good night.